let me take you folks on a not-so-wonderful historical adventure down memory lane, where Irish immigrants were considered the scum of Europe, and red hair was a good signifier that you may or may not be an Irish or Scottish immigrant. In the late 19th and early 20th century, Irishmen were actually considered on par with Negroes. I do not use that word lightly, but that is what this illustration shows. And a lot of pseudosciences were coming along, like craniometry, that were trying to tie how civilized a person was, or a people's were, based on the shapes of their skulls, and how similar or dissimilar they were to the skulls of apes and monkeys. Sound familiar? It's likely you've seen one in the past that likened African Americans, or Africans in general, more to apes than to the civilized European man. But most people are less aware that the same things were done to peoples that were considered lesser, specifically by the British Empire, and of course by extension within the US, which is pretty British-centric, even though they don't like to admit it. So here on the left we have an Irishman, here we have the European man, and there we have a black man, a Negro. I'm going to read the caption at the top. Notice how the Irish are depicted as more similar to Negroes than to Anglo-Teutonic individuals, and both the Irish and Africans are caricatured as ape-like. It could also be useful for a discussion on scientific racism. So the Irish, especially in the US and before that in Europe, suffered similar discrimination when it came to work, owning land, property, marriage, taxes, access to services from the government, as black people did in the US post-slavery and even before that. So here, for example, we have a very interesting caricature. We have Florence Nightingale on the left, as you know, and then we have Bridget McBruiser on the right. And as you can see, they're showing like the just, intelligent Anglo-Saxon European woman versus what they considered a primitive, savage Irish woman on the right. And these were things that were in publications all the time, every day. The Irish were considered poor, primitive, ugly, beastly, violent. And this was, of course, observed in caricatures. Discrimination against red-haired people, Irish people, and people of Irish and Scottish descent was widespread in Europe and in the Americas. There was also a lot of division between different kinds of immigrants, as the Irish were considered the worst kinds of immigrants, as seen in this illustration here that shows immigrants from China, Germany, Austria, and different countries settling into their roles as immigrants, but the Irishman doesn't want to conform. He is the troublemaker, the pot stirrer, the one that cannot be mixed into the melting pot no matter how many times they try. There was even a lot of kiki-ing back then about calling the monkeys in the zoo by Irish names and the apes, because it would be mean for the monkeys, guys. Not for the Irish people, but for the monkeys. Think of the monkeys. And lastly, on job boards, it was very common for people to see on classifieds and in front of places that said, you know, workers needed, no Irish need apply, or no blacks, no Irish. So, while the experience is not comparable on a one-to-one basis, did the Irish receive a lot of discrimination historically? Yes! And there is lots of proof for it. So I'm going to go over some of the other aspects of discrimination in different time periods in other videos, but I'm so happy you're so interested. This is a really cool topic.